Hi, Paul here with Kinetico Advanced Water Systems up in Richmond, Virginia. Get a lot of questions from folks that are DIY and they want to know, how do I install a water softener myself and save some money? So wanted to go ahead and make that as simple as possible. I've trained many folks on the proper way to install. And this is a great example of a system on city water that has chlorine in it, and the water is hard, that we can use as a great example. First thing you have to do is find out where your main is, where your raw water is coming in, so that you know that's where you're going to start running your feed for the softener. So in this case, it's coming through the wall behind here, and it comes up and there's a shutoff valve right here. We have leak detection installed. If you're going to do that, that goes after your main shutoff, obviously, because it's difficult to put it in front of it. And then we have to figure out which lines in the house do you want treated or soft, and which lines in the house you want raw. Really, the only time that that's in question is when you're talking about outside hoses, outside hose spigots. If you do a lot of irrigation or lawn watering, plants, gardening, you probably want to keep those raw, because it doesn't make any sense to put that water through a water softener just to put it out on the yard. It's extra wear and tear on your filters and your dechlorination and everything else that goes along with it. So in this case, we've got two raw hoses, because there's a lot of lawn watering that goes on in this application. And then come on up after that point, and if you need a pressure regulator, then that's where that would be. Come on up, come on over into some sort of dechlorination and filter. If you're on chlorinated city water, if you're on well water, you can skip that part. Comes out, goes down into, in this case, our Kinetico non-electric twin tank system. Comes in, gets filtered, immediately goes down and gets treated in the twin tank softener. Soft water comes on out of there. That's the blue line. Comes on down, goes over to an ultra filter in this case, just to make sure that we're filtering the water down to 0.02 microns. It comes on out of there, and then it comes on up and returns back to the house. So inlet, outlet, drain is very important. Every water softener has a drain, so you just have to plan for that. Make sure that your drain doesn't leak. Make sure that it's going either outside or it's going into a sewer or a septic, depending on what your codes will allow. But plan for a drain. And you may want to check with the specifications of that softener to find out how much water it's going to put off, to make sure you won't have any concerns with it overfilling where you're putting it. The electric softeners, if that's what you're buying, is obviously going to need some sort of electricity. So make sure that your location of your equipment is somewhere close enough to the electric, or bring the electric over so that you can plug it in. The electric softeners, most of them also have battery backups. So that's just something to plan for maintenance. No space is needed for that, but just something to not forget. Since we're talking about space, you have to have, obviously, the space to put the softener in, but you're also going to have to plan for the space for the brine drum, which is where all your salt is going to go. You're going to need to get into this periodically and make sure that it is at the level that it needs to be. Salt is like the soap for cleaning the water softener. It's a great way to think about it. So no salt, no soap. You don't get clean, and it doesn't do what it's supposed to do. But you want to be able to lift the lid up. They almost all have a top lid, and you need to be able to put salt in there. So if you're putting this in a crawl space and your crawl space ceiling is yay big, you're going to have a darn hard time with a bag of salt trying to squeeze it up underneath there. So just plan for those kinds of things. The final thing that you need to do is to actually set the water softener. They all have their own little differences on exactly how to do the settings for hardness, or for gallons, or for time, depending on which type of model you get. But they all need to know how hard, what the compensated hardness is. So compensated hardness is basically a setting that you're going to use to be able to tell the water softener how often it needs cleaning. Compensated hardness formula is, first you have to measure the hardness. Then you have to measure the ferrous iron or the dissolved iron. And you also need to measure if you have any dissolved manganese. So pretty much iron and manganese measured in parts per million, take those times 5. Add those together to your hardness, that gives you your compensated hardness. That's the number that you would use for setting it. Really, that's the startups are all unique to their own manufacturer and are covered in the startup instructions. But really, I've covered the basics on doing a water softener yourself, other than the specific plumbing techniques used to make some connections. They're all pretty much the same. I hope this helped.